So I think we'll begin. So as I said, I'm Becca and I work for Feedback, and Feedback is an environmental organisation that basically sort of does a lot of campaigning and research really to give suggestions to actually how we can improve our food systems. So we're not just exclusive to the UK, we actually are international. So it's really nice that we're doing a lot of work in Bucks at the moment, as we've been funded by the Rothschild Foundation, and we're delivering the Food Citizens project. And that's really about sort of reducing food waste and creating awareness about that, as well as sustainable diets. So we've created Bucks Food Revolution, which is this weekend, which is really a good platform of a range of different events where we've been able to give people that are running local schemes, local projects, local enthusiasts and experts as a little chance really to share what they do, but also to inspire us all to do a bit better when it comes to reducing our food waste. So I'd like to introduce Megan, who is also from Feedback, who will be helping us out this evening, and also Melissa, who is from Aylesbury Community Fridge. So she'll be introducing that a little bit later. So So food waste. Now, food waste isn't something we always think about, but particularly at the moment, and especially with lockdown, it's been something that maybe we thought a little bit more about. And food waste comes in two types. Now, we have avoidable food waste, which is basically food that perhaps becomes food waste due to our neglect, more than the fact that we can't eat it or use it. And then we have unavoidable food waste, which is all the things that maybe we can't eat, like sort of eggshells, the plastic of tea bags, maybe not the tea bag, the tea inside the tea bags, and sort of some of the other things that actually we don't really want to eat, like peelings. But some peelings obviously can be cooked and used, and you'll be finding out about that during this presentation. So in Bucks, we waste probably about 240 kg of food a year. So actually about 400 meals worth could be avoided. And so it's really important in Bucks that we look at that. And actually that's the same amount of about 82 bricks that I learned whilst researching this. So it's quite a lot of food that Bucks, you know, an average family would waste in a year. So I think some of you may have been asked to do this in preparation for this session, but we would like to know what sort of food waste you think that you waste in your home. And we have a poll here for you. If you wouldn't mind just letting us know the sort of food waste that you have in your household. So I know we asked people to maybe have a check over the last few days about food that you've wasted or gone into your rubbish bin, if you like. So yeah, if you could all just participate in that poll, that would be great. Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds just in case anyone hasn't been able to add their food waste stats into our poll. So there we have it. We look like actually as a bunch of citizens here that actually it's sort of the vegetable peelings, maybe the leftovers from the plate, and sort of fruit and veg that has started to go off slightly, seen better days, should we say. So there we go. Go back. Yeah. Cool. So food waste really, and the food that we waste in our homes can be broken up, as you can see from this chart. So we're not actually dissimilar to quite a lot of people. with the highest section being sort of the fresh fruit and vegetables, maybe the things that get hidden or maybe don't get used. We had good intentions but didn't actually get to eat the food that we bought. And actually 70% of all of the waste that is produced, food waste should I say, comes from our homes. So it's actually quite a lot. So here we have a range of different facts and figures. So food waste obviously doesn't just get wasted in the home, it does get wasted on the farms where it's produced, it does get wasted in the processing, and also then when it comes to supermarkets and some of the standards that they adhere to or they need to adhere to obviously means that some of the food is wasted. So we have a whole range of things there really just for us to have a quick look at. And financially, food waste is quite a big player, that actually around £400 could be saved a year if you paid a little bit more attention to the food that we wasted. Lockdown. So we can't really escape it at the moment. And I know that many people that do care about food obviously know that with the first lockdown in March, there was quite a lot of food that was obviously oversourced by a lot of us. People did panic buy and buy a lot of things that maybe they didn't use. I know there were quite a few images of food waste bins sort of overpiled with loaves of bread that had gone out of date and many other things as well. And I think it's really important to have a look at this, and we can see that actually, you know, compared to sort of full lockdown, when people maybe did care a little bit more during the first lockdown about the food and wasting it and not wasting it, that actually unfortunate that the stats have meant, as you can see with the stats, that this has increased over the last few months, and in June obviously the food waste had gone back up again. So it's a bit unfortunate that we didn't learn. I'd be interested to see what the stats are like for this second lockdown. So I'd like to pass over to Melissa, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the community fridges.
Hi everyone, and huge thank you to Rebecca and Feedback for inviting me along today. It's wonderful to be here with you all. Now, as Rebecca told you, I am the coordinator for the Aylesbury Community Fridge. In case you don't know what one of these is, it is an avenue for getting rid of waste food in the community to people in the community who can eat it. So if you were to go to one, you'd see just what you've got in my picture, a room with storage, fridge and freezer in, where people can freely come along and take food that's donated. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the supermarkets, it's coming from local people. Our allotment holders are great at bringing us extra produce. And as Rebecca said, this is one of the ways that families can actually reduce that money that is being wasted and also help our local businesses to tackle their own food waste problems. We were also funded by Rothschild with the initial funding, and we're being supported ongoing by Hubbub, the national environmental charity. And I will pop both of these details, both for myself and for the Hubbub network, because there are community fridges all over the UK. And if you're in Bucks, your closest ones are either us in Aylesbury, there's 2 in High Wycombe and 1 in Cheshire.
Fabulous. So yeah, Melissa will be helping out with some hints and tips to help prevent food waste during this presentation. So thank you very much for joining us. So as part of the Food Citizens project in Bucks, we've created the 12 icons of food waste. Now this is quite a bright and colourful way of us approaching building awareness of the areas where people can obviously quite commonly reduce the food that's wasted. And here we have it in situ. So we have here a few different areas in the kitchen where you would have commonly found where our practice may lead us into bad habits. And so what we're going to be doing is just going through those areas now as part of this presentation. Date labels. Would you like to introduce us to our date labels, Melissa?
I most certainly would. So this is one of the most commonly confusing pieces of information for people. And we have 2 forms of date labels. We have our use by date and we have a best before date. Now, use bys are exactly that. They're on the foods that tend to deteriorate very quickly: fresh meat, fish, bagged salads, that sort of thing. And what you need to do is really pay attention to these, because these are about your food safety. It's about not putting your health at risk. The bacteria in these tend to rise very fast, and even if something smells or looks okay, it may well be dangerous for you to eat it. So if there is a use by date on there, make sure you're obeying it. Now, a couple of things to note. If you open a product, there's normally more instructions on how long you must use that product within a certain window. It's normally about 3 days, but always read carefully. And the one way that you can extend that is to actually freeze, but do make sure that you date your produce when you put it in the freezer, and when it comes out, make sure that you're following all the cooking instructions. Sometimes it says defrost before use, sometimes it says cook straight from frozen, but sticking within those date parameters is so important. Now, a best before date is just that. It is best before. So you may find that bread is a common one with a best before. The day after, it's not going to harm you. 3 months later, it is going to harm you. It's got mold on it. So don't be eating it in that case. So within a couple of days, if you're going to go past a best before, but these are colour, flavour and texture as an indication. Before that date, the product's going to be at its best. After that date, it's not going to be. But there are certain things that we can do to use things at this point, but we'll talk about those later. Thank you.
Good. So someone earlier in one of the sessions said actually your freezer and your fridge are really your best friends to combating food waste. Now, a fridge is obviously set at different temperatures, and it's between 0 and 5 degrees Celsius that you'll have the best temperature in your fridge to actually keep your produce, any sort of fruit and veg and other items for longest. So do make sure that your fridge is set to this temperature. Storing fresh food, we all sort of think that actually having a full cupboard or a full fridge may actually be a good sign of wealth. But actually, is it? When you have a full fridge, I think we all know it, even if you don't have a full fridge, there will be things stuck at the back, a little bit lonely, getting older by the day, that we may not actually pay any attention to. So it's really key that we do actually rotate the items, especially in fridges. I know we may have cupboards that we use as well, but it's good every now and then to have a little look around your cupboard and make sure that anything that's approaching their sort of best before dates or use by dates is possibly at the front. Also, leftovers, if you have leftovers, maybe bring them to the front as well, so that any hungry hands may grab that first rather than something that's further back with a longer shelf life. So again, we will be looking at freezing things later, but your freezer is your best friend, and many people that we're speaking to over this weekend has really been sort of repping for the fridges. Some people have little fridges, some people have massive chest fridges and freezers, sorry. And so it's really important that you do get to know what you can freeze, when and for how long. So it's really handy to sort of look at what you've got and how you can keep this for longer. Things like eggs. Actually, I found this fact out recently doing the research, that actually eggs and the eggshells are porous. So anything you keep next to an exposed egg, it will actually take on the flavour. So that's why it's really good to keep your eggs within the egg boxes and away from things like onions and other smelly items that may mean that your eggs take on that taste and flavour. So it's also about looking at where you're storing things in the fridge, so that you keep things in their best condition for as long as possible. Love Food Hate Waste campaign does have an A to Z of really handy storage instructions and handy hints. So we do suggest everyone goes and checks that out online. Everything from avocados to corn on the cob to fish to everything. So it's a really handy sort of A to Z list for you to have a look at. Would you like to have a, yeah.
Lovely. So let's have a look at some of the things that you could be freezing that you may not already be doing so with. So let's go through these pictures. So the first one is cheese. That can be frozen. My suggestion would be to freeze it in the size portions that you actually want to use it, or you can actually grate it. That's a nice one. Get a fork and just put as much into your dishes whilst you're cooking. What tends to happen is you get a big ice block if you're not careful, and then you have to use it all up. But that's okay, because I'm sure there's some of us in here who love cheese. The next one of these is cakes. Now, you might be in a household like mine where it's not going to make it to the freezer, or you may be in a household that has a little bit more control around it. One of the best things you can do is get yourself a cake that's not iced. So it's a plain cake, like a bar of Madeira cake, slice it into slices, pop some greaseproof paper behind it, pop it in a bag, squeeze the air out, and then you can enjoy the cake at your leisure, taking a slice out. It doesn't take too long to defrost. I have known people to eat it frozen, but hey, each to their own. So I'd advocate you spacing your cake out. Wine, this is another one. For those avid cooks out there, sometimes you end up with a little glass or two left in the bottle. Some of us don't, but that's okay too. Again, this can be frozen. One of the useful things for this is getting yourself a silicone cupcake tray, because you can then freeze like a little half glass to pop into a bolognese sauce, or possibly in with your risotto. Your red and white wines being slightly different, but it works in principle for both of them. The silicone being nice and easy to bend around and pop the things out. Actually, talking about that, when I say ice cube trays, I'd advocate exactly the same thing. The more flexible, the better. Now let's take a look at lemons. You may not have actually thought about freezing a lemon, but for those that like to have a lemon in the house and perhaps just add a little bit of zest to something, you can get a lemon, freeze it whole, take it out, grate some of the zest off and pop it back in the freezer for another day. And when you've finally got rid of all the zest, then obviously let it thaw. Don't try and juice it while it's frozen. Let it thaw and use the juice, or make nice thin slices, freeze it flat, and then pop it into a box to drop into your drinks. One little point here, if you are going to use it as rind, make sure you've got an unwaxed lemon, or wash the lemon in hot water to get rid of the wax before freezing. Lovely, right, pesto and fresh herbs. This could go on for a while, I think. If you get your pesto, it's often one of those ingredients that goes off quite quick. Again, portioning it down and spreading it out is one way to do it. And your herbs, you can chop them up, pop them in a little oil, or you can actually freeze them straight in, but be warned, they will disintegrate a bit if you try and take them out. So it needs to be something that you don't want a fresh herb, nice sprinkle on a salad. It's more if you're going to add them to something you're already cooking. Exactly the same thing will work for ginger and garlic. Chop it, do get rid of the skin first. Don't be putting that in there. You don't want that inside. And a little bit of oil, and then they'll pop out of your trays equally as quickly. Now, avocados, this is a weird one because, you know, we don't normally think about freezing avocados, but if you mash it with a little bit of lemon or lime, it'll stop it going brown, but you can freeze it up like a dip, a little bit like you might use as a base for your guacamole. Pasta, we're really talking about leftovers, everybody, and this is not going to be a surprise. I'm sure you've all thought, I have got a bit carried away and made dinner for 10, not for 2. So having some of those takeaway boxes that you can reuse are really useful. Putting your food in, make sure you're labelling with a date, and if you've got a Sharpie, you can write on the lid, and when you reuse your box, it'll wash off with a bit of a scouring pad, and then you can reuse that box. The last one on these is our strawberries. They change consistency when they are frozen, so they go soft. They're not that nice firm fruit anymore, but one great way to do this is to actually make them into a nice strawberry sauce before freezing. So pop them in a pan with a little bit of sugar, simmer them for a little while, pop them in a blender, and then put them in your freezer. Again, portion controlled so that you can pop them out and use them as you wish, or go for a dish that doesn't require firm strawberries like a summer pudding or an Eton mess. There we are. 10 things you could be freezing.
And if anyone does have any sort of tips that they may have for pre-freezing food, so I know where you need to saute mushrooms, I think, before you freeze them, or even with kale, you might want to blend that up or cook it beforehand before freezing, as it will take up less space. So if there are any tips that you've got that you'd like to share, then please do put them in the chat. We'd be really interested to hear about those.
The one little bit that I forgot actually, Rebecca, which is quite important, is freezer burn. So if you're going to put something in the freezer, what tends to happen is the moisture will come up as like a layer of ice on the top. It is taking the moisture out of your food products. So we really say 3 months is a good sort of rule of thumb, but it does depend on the conditions in your freezer. So getting as much air out as possible is one of the things to prolong that process with the freezing.
Wonderful. So here we have the example of an ice cube tray, and as you can see here, that people have obviously frozen lots of different things. Things like pureed strawberries, as we say, it's good to obviously puree sort of soft fruits, carrots, hummus, baked beans, a whole range of things there. So actually, we do sort of say that ice cube trays are really handy. You can obviously freeze sort of herbs in olive oil and things like that, which obviously you can pop out and put straight into your dish that you're cooking. The good old gooey style dessert glass pots that you get, again, these are quite good for freezing little items of food that you may have if you cover them with some sort of covering, foil or cling film, well, probably more foil if you can use that. Reusable bags obviously save space, so if you do put things into a reusable bag, if you pre-freeze them sort of flat, and then you can stack them almost like a bookshelf, if you have a freezer that's going to allow you to do that to save space. And then sort of trays that you may get that you can reuse from bought food that you may have, a really good a way to sort of recycle those is to use them for freezing your dishes. So yeah, we would little tip that we got as well, if you use glass jars, do leave enough headspace on the top of jars if you're going to be using those. Cool them overnight and then put the lid on, because otherwise you may end up with glass in your freezer and in your food, which obviously doesn't help to prevent food waste. So that's a little tip for you there. So next we've got food storage, which is again sort of what we've covered a little bit there. So I think Melissa again is going to be teaching us about storage.
Okay, so let's have a little look. Oh, hang on. Yes, I am unmuted. That's okay. I've got a new symbol. I wasn't aware of that one, but hey, it's all fun when we're learning together, isn't it? So let's look at some of the things that often get thrown away. So avocado gets thrown away because it goes brown. So once you've cut it, the simplest thing you can do is rub some lemon or lime over the surface, which will stop it going brown. But also, if you want to pre-prep for your salad, you can chop and stir either of those juices through it, and again that will solve that problem for you. The other option is to store your avocado next to an onion, which I understand will keep it fresher for longer. Who knows, these wonderful things that onions can do. I do love to hear new things, so it's going to be fun to see what else other people suggest. We do get a lot of waste and leftovers, so actually making those into a stock, boiling up your bones and your bits of vegetables, and then saving those, just as you saw that lovely slide that Becca just had with the green tray, perfect for your stock again, and then tipping straight into a sauce when you're cooking it up. Baked goods is really, really common through community fridges, but we all get a bread that's day old. If you run it under the tap and stick it in the oven, it will crisp up and freshen up within about 4 minutes. About approximate temperature 180, the standard temperature we cook most things in our oven. And then you can use the microwave in a similar way by dampening the product, but it does produce a soft product, not a crispy one. So that if you're a crisp addict like me, put it in the oven. Now, celery and those carrots and also broccoli often come with the green leafy bits on the top. These are actually going to continue to take water out of the actual product that we want, which is generally the stalks, the carrot, or the beetroot itself. But all of those three can actually be used in dishes. So taking your celery tops off and sprinkling on your salad as a pretty garnish, or the carrot tops blended up to make a pesto. And I've recently discovered, having been a little bit of a gardener in lockdown, that beetroot leaves are delicious and just like chard when they are cooked like chard. So slice them up, boil them in a little water, and they keep that beautiful purple stem and the bright green leaf, which is so attractive on the plate. Fresh herbs we talked a little bit about earlier on, and always chopping them up before they go off is a really good way, and blending them with some butter. Make yourself some nice herby garlicky type bread, or freezing down for later cooking is a really good way of using them up. I'd always advocate a nice fresh plant, but I know we can't always all have those, so you can't keep it going for as long, but we can keep them in other ways. Our loose leaf salad is probably one of the most common things that families bin. And the very, very simple answer to this is to get yourself a Tupperware, put some dry kitchen paper in the bottom, tip the salad in and lock it down. Now, if you're like me, you want something even quicker, literally get the bag, cut the top off, pop the kitchen paper in and put an elastic band around it. It works equally as well, and you don't even have to wash up the Tupperware. Whoop, whoop. So that's cheating, but that's okay. Now, wonderful Becca already told us that those eggs there are porous. So they will take on the flavour of anything that you put them by. However, if you leave them in the box will act as an extra layer of protection and help to reduce that. Now, where should we be keeping our eggs? This is really important. Most of us stick them in the fridge door. Now, what happens with the fridge door is we open it, we close it, we open it, we close it, we open it, we close it. That means the temperatures are fluctuating. Now, this isn't great for the eggs. If we put them in the main part of our fridges, as Becca said, 0 to 5 degrees in our fridges, the eggs will keep fresher for longer. And do bear in mind that all eggs that come from supermarkets are dated. So that is an indicator for you as well. Excellent. Where are we getting to now? We're on our berries again. I know you think I've got an obsession with berries. Actually, I do. I love berries. But one of the things that you'll find with raspberries and blackberries is that they get little mold spores and bacteria between the little nodules that are on there. So washing them down in a weak solution, so it's 1 part white wine vinegar to 10 parts of water, giving them a swill around will actually combat that. Dry them out on a bit of tissue, pop them in the box in the fridge. They will last for longer. Now, I know that you're going to love your cut flowers in your house. Here's a new one for you. Cut the bottom of your broccoli, cut the bottom of your asparagus, stand them in water just like you would flowers, and they will retain that nice crispness for much longer because they're still taking up the water. And lastly, milk. A friend of mine said, I live on my own and I cannot for toffee buy the 1 pint lots of milk. Some of the manufacturers have stopped doing these in our supermarkets. So if you are on your own, in fact, if you're not even and you end up with a load of milk, freeze it down and you can use it in cooking. You can use it in your tea. It gets a little bit watery. So I would advocate, it's probably better for a rice pudding or something like that, but it is totally possible to make your foods last longer. Thank you.
Wonderful. Lovely. We got there. So keeping lists. Some of us are very good list keepers and makers and some of us aren't. But actually what we're saying is it's really good to know what you've got in your cupboard, in your fridge, and definitely in your freezer. I mean, freezers aren't always the easy tray types where you can see what you've got. So things do tend to get a little bit lost and neglected at the bottom. So actually it's really good to keep a list of what you've got in cupboards, so that you can use these on a regular basis and obviously keep the sort of stock ticking over, if you like, about what you can use in the kitchen. So it's really important to keep a list so that you can refer to this rather than having to trail through your cupboards before you put together another list, which is your shopping list. Meal planning. Now, meal planning is something, again, that has come up a lot this weekend, where people have sort of said, actually, it's really good to sort of pre-think what you're going to have on the menu in your house on a weekly basis. So it's good from a shopping perspective, but actually it's really good for sort of making sure that you do use up everything that is sort of kicking about in the fridge that may be close to its date. So actually you can save sort of leftovers. You could have buffet style meals where you use things that need to be used up. You can put, you know, ingredients in that are sort of versatile, and that you really sort of know what you need to purchase rather than being a little bit sort of hit and miss with going out every day and maybe purchasing things. Is a bit of pre-planning. So also it's good to have a look at what's in season. Also, you may have something that needs using up. And you can also then, good old batch cooking is cook a lot more than maybe what you need, put them in the freezer, or you may, you know, a single person may be happy to eat the things for 3 days in a row, which I know I've had to do on occasion, but really sort of to have control over the meals that you might be creating on a weekly basis. Shopping lists. So shopping may be a chore, it may be a pleasure. everyone thinks a bit differently about it. Some people are really good at lists and people enjoy writing a shopping list. It's really good, again, to consult what you may have or what you need in order to create the meals for the week. So people say try not to go when you're hungry. I know shopping may happen when you're on your way back from work or when you have the time to go, when you know you're not doing other things. So it's really good to have a list so you can preempt what you need, but you won't be tempted on sort of impulse buys that might be at the end of the aisle or near the tills. So basically, you know, where there is bulk buying, you may actually want to not always take everything home, but maybe buy one, get one free. You can donate that to one of the baskets that you see in the supermarkets for food banks or for the community fridge. So yeah, so that's shopping list. Portion sizes. I don't know, do you want to speak about portion sizes, Melissa?
I can do. So it's really interesting, isn't it, how each of us will vary our portion sizes, and really you need to work out what it is that you're cooking before you start. So when I'm cooking for myself and my 20-month-old nieces, I need a lot less than I need when I cook for myself and the full family of 6. So being aware of those is going to not only give you this place where you're not going to be wasting food, but also giving you the best use of your money as well. So we saw recently somebody on Saturday Kitchen telling us we could make 4 meals out of a £5 chicken, which I thought was quite resourceful. So you can learn to do different things, but also there's always a guidance on a packet for the size of something. If you think about the palm of your hand here being your average serving of meat or fish, but also just thinking, I want to cook once, and as Becca's just told us so beautifully, batch cook for a few days and get that out the way. That's always a very useful one for us to use. Did I miss any, Miss Becca?
No, I don't think so. And I know on one of our videos that we had this morning, we had Mary who was saying, actually, while you're batch cooking something, then why not do another meal as well? So you're sort of only allowing yourself to be stuck in the kitchen for a certain amount of time. Well, some people enjoy being in the kitchen, sorry. So actually, if it's something that, you know, you don't want to be doing every evening, then do, you know, see how you can mix and match and maybe batch cook a few different meals at the same time. Christmas is coming. So yes, we know that Christmas is the key time for leftovers. So we're just a few things really to help you with maybe thinking about Christmas and reducing the food waste. Some people have no problem at all and they have families that will use up everything that they have in the fridge. Others of us may not have that many people in our households to eat up all the food. So yeah, so vegetables and managing your vegetables is really key, and actually how you can use something that's used up from the, you know, a meal before in the next day. I think it's bubble and squeak you were saying about, Melissa, was a bit of a tradition in your house.
Oh yeah, the carrots, the potatoes, the Brussels sprouts, anything gets chucked in by my uncle, and then we all have some nice cold turkey or ham, or whoever's vegetarian that week has something equally as delicious, and then we blend it all together and we get Boxing Day. The house is almost clear apart from the cheese board.
Apart from the cheese board, wow. So yeah, so it's a really good idea to have sort of buffet teas where you can sort of mix and match a few different things. So that was just a bit of a suggestion around Christmas that is obviously coming up. Here we have a couple of things that we thought we could mention. So using your vegetable peels to make sort of a version of crisps. So yeah, you can use different sort of peelings from different vegetables in a very similar way to potato peelings to make vegetable crisps. Banana skins. You can do lots of exciting things with banana skins like we've heard over this weekend. So other than chutney, you can also do various different fun things there, as well as making smoothies with skins as well. So a blender is possibly a food waste champion's best friend, I think, in some respects. And also don't forget that sort of farms that do have chickens or pigs would welcome sort of any sort of vegetable and food waste as well. So don't forget the pigs. I think there was a campaign recently in Buckinghamshire for a farm that had pigs to say actually they would welcome your food waste should you not want to compost it or use it in any other way. So yes, composting. Composting was one of the key talks this morning, so it's good to bring that back into this session. So if you do have food waste that can be composted, then there are various different ways of doing that. If you have one bokashi bin that's going to be just placed in your kitchen, obviously your various different types of bins that you can have in gardens. And there are also different community allotments and gardens across Bucks, like Lindengate, Grow Together in Wickham have said that they would welcome anybody's food waste for their compost bin. So please do think about things like that and your kitchen scraps that could go to other places as well if you haven't got the space to have it in your garden. A few key things is like leaving your skin on your vegetables. Sometimes it doesn't really make a difference to the flavour if you do this. Sometimes people will notice it, but actually it's just something that may be a bit more of a learned behaviour. And also then use things like the stalks for sauces and soups as well, when they can be blended up and added without people's knowledge that they're eating something that they may not think is normal practice. Foraging and growing your own. So again, this has been a really exciting element of Bucks Food Revolution. So foraging is going out into your local area and finding sort of berries, fruits and nuts that actually are in public spaces and are able to be picked and eaten by the general public. So we do say be careful if you don't know what you're picking and eating, then obviously don't gamble with your health. But there are things like the classic blackberries that people go out and pick, as well as some fruits that are in public land that you can also have access to. And you don't want obviously a lot of those sort of fruit and berries to go to waste. Don't take all of them, because obviously birds and insects do rely on them as a food source as well. Growing your own herbs, vegetables and fruit is also something that has become an increased interest of the British public this summer, with obviously lockdown, and particularly women have increased the allotment percentage in a lot of the sort of public allotment spaces in Buckinghamshire. There's been an increase in people going on to the waiting lists as well. So it's a really good opportunity for people to come together to share ideas about growing and learning from each other as well. And there's a really nice network, and we have a forum this evening from some of the gardeners and allotment holders that will be sharing some hints and tips. So there's also then the chance that you could swap your items with other growers. You can also donate them again to food banks or different food schemes in Buckinghamshire. And also you can take things as you need it. You don't need to have a big bag of parsnips. You could just take one or two for your Sunday meal and go back next Sunday. So it gives you a little bit more control over the fruit and veg that you may need and what you can eat in your house. So here we have time for some questions, or if you do have any sort of suggestions that we haven't covered, some hints and tips that we would gratefully hear.
So we've had some really good questions come through the chat when you guys were doing your presentation. The first couple are about, so you were talking about freezer foods and things. And the first question was like, once the food you're wanting to freeze is in the tray and in the freezer, should it be covered? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, 100% yes. Cover it and get as much air out as possible, and definitely date it as well. And I know this sounds crazy, but write what it is. And I've recently taken berries out of the freezer thinking it was a stew and vice versa. So it's very easily done if you're freezing similar looking items.
And I think that's a really good tip for putting things in the cupboard. And I know my nan used to put the dates in big bold pen on the side of sort of jars, containers, so that although sometimes it's really hard to see and make out the best before dates, if it's written quite big and bold, that helps you sort of manage what's in your cupboard and the dates. So yeah, that's just a handy hint that we thought of earlier.
Yeah, we have pull-out drawers at home, just like Becca said, right on the top of your tins, what it is, what the date is. You soon, when you're doing your shopping, you can soon see what it is. And you can also go, this week I'm going to use up X, Y, and Z and be a creative chef, which we love a little bit of, don't we?
Great, thanks. And so the next question was, can all types of food be used straight from the freezer, or are there certain ones that have to be defrosted first before eating?
So the straight answer from my point of view, Becca and I we'll see where we align, hopefully we do, would be fish and meat should be defrosted thoroughly, unless it is in a pre-packaged product from a supermarket that states it may be cooked from frozen. They're the definite ones that, and if you have put eggs in the freezer, I forgot to mention, you can shell your eggs and freeze them raw, and you can separate your yolks and your whites if you want for cooking. But again, make sure everything is fully defrosted. So it's really about reading your packets. And as I say, the high risk foods are the ones that you've really, really got to be careful with. They're the ones that come with the use by dates or have been bought at the fishmongers or in the butchers. Again, dating is your friend.
Great.
Nothing more to add.
And this one is actually a bit more of a complex question. So do we think that one of the issues creating waste is the prepackaged portion sizes that supermarkets sell? And if so, what can we do to change this?
No, definitely. And I think it's sort of dependent on the food type that you're looking at as well. And I know we were thinking about that in one of the previous sessions. So sometimes it's easier to grab the bag that sort of has a price on rather than a weight, so you know what you're getting for your money. And I think shopping habits has sort of led us to behave in a certain way. So again, there are things like oleo that mean you can swap items with sort of neighbours, and various other schemes around as well if you do find you've got sort of surplus yourself. There's obviously food banks that would welcome, you know, sort of fresh and ambient goods at the moment. So, you know, do think in advance. Don't leave it till it's right near its best before donating it to the food bank, because unfortunately they have a system to distributing that. So it's good to think about that. But I guess as much as possible, and if space allows, it is sort of preempting what items you have, possibly freezing it or using it in a creative recipe within that sort of date space.
Great. Those are all the questions that came through in the chat box. So I guess if anybody has any other questions that you'd like to pose, please feel free to jump in. Oh, we do have one. I spoke too soon. So do we have any tips on engaging family and friends on the issue who are really not interested in food waste?
So one of the things I'd say is bring that. So as part of my role as the community fridge coordinator, I'm actually housed in a church that has a food bank as well. So one of these things that we found really engages people is to bring them down and see these two things in operation. So come down and visit a community fridge, see what's actually there, see what could be used, giving them a gift. Like I attended the feedback session with the chef who'd actually used the banana skins, and giving them a little jar with this produce has been produced, I don't know, with something eco written on it. I think that's a really lovely way. And some of the really nice resources that you can access through Becca and the organisations connected to her are some of the cookery ideas. And I think our younger people especially really love the foraging and then going home and creating something, or even just the sheer fun of actually being allowed to go in the bin and have a look and see what's in there. And doing their own little pie chart is also fun. I used to be a primary school teacher. Kids love anything they're allowed to get dirty and sticky with. So doing all of those things is fun. And also just having a family feast. I can't remember what Rebecca called it, but she had a brilliant term for it. It was like a leftover buffet or something, and everybody brings and uses up. Yeah, a party. I know we can't do it right now, so I'm not advocating do it right now. Please do not do it right now. We're not allowed, but when we are, these are some of the ways that are really fun and engaging for family and friends, because food is at the end all about community, and it's one of those ways where we really engage with each other and do connect. So, you know, if you think about it just in a very logical way, we're all putting the same thing in our body, and that alone unites us, let alone the community of being together. So there you go, a couple of ways you can do it.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I think it's really important that we sort of let ourselves experiment with food, because I think, you know, a lot of people are afraid of maybe trying a vegetable that they've never cooked before. People don't want to waste their money on, you know, something that they may not like. But I think it's really important to sort of experiment, and it's that education that, you know, you may have had passed down through generations, but also just that experimental, you know, having a taste of something that's different that may not have tried before, and sort of reintroducing some of those fresh items back into sort of meals and cooking together, and sort of people being part of that and making those dishes. And I know patience levels don't always allow us to sort of make dishes as families, but actually, you know, one night a week or one night a month, it's really nice to have that experimentation so that people learn how to cook. And it isn't just about getting something always out the freezer and straight into the oven or using a microwave. It is about actually developing those skills and being, you know, confident to be able to use them as well.
Great. So we have kind of a follow-up question, a little bit talking about the community fridges. So what's the best way to help people feel more comfortable about using the community fridge and food bank? Like, are there communities or faith groups that are less likely to visit, for example, maybe older people or people who don't know how to cook, and etc.?
Okay, good question. So obviously my community fridge is housed in a church. So that in itself, it's been really important for us to get across to people that it has absolutely nothing to do with faith, and community fridges are for everybody. I think the distinction that people find confusing is what's a community fridge and what's a food bank. Now, a food bank has historically had some sort of criteria for having the food. At the moment, it's slightly different because there's so many people in need that you can't go on the traditional methods with that one. But one of the key things I think about running your food banks and your community fridges is just really being welcoming and letting people come and have a look and answering questions. So there is this sense of, I've had quite a few people say to me, oh, I feel really bad taking it. And I'm like, okay, we've got to change the mindset here, because the mindset around a community fridge especially is you are actually helping the environment, you are helping the businesses, you are helping the people that bought the food, because otherwise this would have gone into waste. And that is the key thing, is going, we are making a difference by this small action of coming in and taking and using these things effectively, and we're actually stewarding, if you like, the resources that we've got. So things like the farmers, where, you know, the supermarkets aren't selling the misshapen veg, but they're giving it to us. We can do three, I mean, in my context, I can do it in three ways. I can send it to the kitchen to be made into meals to be given away, give it away through the community fridge, or give it away through the food bank. And lots of our community projects are working in these partnerships where they're coming together. So actually our allotment holders in our local area have started giving to us more recently for all of these things. And we're saying, look at how the community cares about you. Look at how they want to share this with you. And these are some of the ways that we found really, really useful. It's just that engagement, or having a cookery class and people come in and just enjoy it. And it's just a fun thing. And it becomes normality, just as you might, you know, pop a bag of apples over your neighbour's fence and go, my apple tree produced this, look, please help me by using some of them. It's that togetherness that makes the difference.
Cool.
Wonderful, thanks. I think that's kind of it for the questions in the chat box. Does anybody have anything further? Or maybe they just want to unmute themselves and ask the presenter as well? No?
Or any burning tips that we don't know about. I think I've found out a few ways recently about how to store my half an avocado when I don't want to eat a full one, like turning it upside down in a tub of water, or putting the skin on top of the other half and things like that. So it's always really good to share sort of different hints and tips if anyone has got any. If not, then I will just share with you a bit of a feedback poll. So, oh, we've got one about pickling. So yeah, I know it's definitely something that I've tried with some peppers this year. So yeah, if we can launch the poll and we can keep chatting. If you can mention what's going on in the chat, Megan.
Yeah, of course. It's good to know that pickling is really easy. I've never actually given it a shot before. It always just seems so difficult, but I guess now that we're in lockdown, I might as well give it a go. Not going anywhere else.
I started completely by accident because there was a guy who is based near me who supplies vegetables to Subway and all these big kind of sandwich companies. And he suddenly just had to clear his warehouse. So he just invited people to go, and I couldn't go to that. But as I was doing my daily walk around the village, I kept finding vegetables, which was quite surreal. On top of everything else that was going on in the world, like finding vegetables was another layer of crazy. But yes, I took some cucumber and that started it. And yeah, so 10 minutes, it's easy.
Oh, that's great to know. Thanks.
Give it a go.
Okay.
What I will do as well is just stick a link into the chat. So we've got a competition that's going to be running over the next 2 weeks to win a zero waste winter hamper. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your reducing food waste tip and entering that draw, you could hopefully win that before Christmas. So yeah, that's just our little bit of fun of collecting up lots of people's sort of experience and different tips that people may have that might have been passed down or they might have picked up from other people. So it's a really good way of sharing that, and we'll be rolling that out with some of the recordings from this weekend so that people can actually listen into things they may not have been able to attend. So yeah, lovely. And there you go, there's the results. So all positive, which is really nice. And I think the thing is to approach reducing food waste with as much creativity as you can, and obviously just sort of sharing those with friends and family. If you find a good recipe or something creative to do with your, I don't know, beetroot leaves and things like that, is to share it with other people so that we can sort of pass on that messaging as well. So thank you very much to everyone for attending. Thank you to Melissa and Megan for joining us on this session. And I hope everyone has a pleasant evening. And thank you very much for joining us for Bucks Food Revolution.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.